Forget that old saying that a straight line is the shortest distance between the start and finish. In many ways, that's not true, at least not in drag racing. Speed, you see, comes in curves. The curve of a wing, a cylinder, the delicate bend of exhaust pipes, a bank of gauges. It's found in the arc of a roll bar, and a wrench in the hands of a veteran crew chief. No, speed is not straight. It lurks in the ellipse of the daredevil's eye, in the roar of engines, and in flashing circles of suspense. Yes, the track may be a quarter-mile straight, but the shortest distance from start to finish is round. From National Trail Raceway, just outside of Columbus, Ohio, it's the 1994 NHRA Oldsmobile Springnationals, where a record crowd is packed into this historic facility to see a great day of racing. Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Lewis. Welcome to Columbus, Ohio, where this weekend life is being lived in 5-second bursts at 300 miles per hour, and where the pressure is on, because never before have the season-long standings been tighter than they are right here in the three classes of competition we'll be seeing. That's Pro Stock, Funny Car, and Top Fuel. And no one has better perspective on what this all means than our analyst, Steve Evans.
That's especially true in Top Fuel. I have never seen the first 10 as close as they are at this point in the season, and it is really tight at the top between Joe Amato, Connie Coletta, and Don Prudhomme. Probably of those three drivers, the one that has the best day here in Columbus will leave the points leader.
Well, you're talking about the superstars of this game. It looks like the real adversary may be right below us, and that's the track.
They call this the Spring Nationals. It is really the first race of a hot summer season. Gone are the cool, tacky tracks of the early year, replaced by a solar-heated monster that can bite anybody. And that means the crew chiefs have to show some restraint. Instead of 5,000 horsepower, maybe only 4,000 horsepower, or their drivers are going to have to resort to old tricks like using the throttle to feather it down the racetrack, even holding the brake to reduce the wheel spin. It's tough for the Top Fuel dragsters, even more difficult for the front-engine funny cars.
Well, for a report on someone who has prepared specially for this slippery track this weekend in Columbus, let's go to our man in the pits, two-time funny car champion, Frank Hawley.
The winner in either of our nitro classes today, both Top Fuel Dragster and Fuel Funny Car, could be the team that best masters the slippery track conditions here in Columbus. Well, reigning Funny Car champion John Force recently told me he's one of the only drivers that still goes around the country to these smaller racetracks and performs exhibition runs. He's thought the conditions here in Columbus were going to be slippery, and that racing at those smaller tracks was going to give his crew chief, Austin Coyle, an opportunity to set the car up for the conditions here at Columbus. So far, it looks like his homework has paid off, as John has posted the two quickest runs of the event.
We'll see John Force later, but first, Top Fuel competition, round 2. Connie Coletta gets ready to go against Corey McLenathan. And it is a very tight point race in the Top Fuel category. Joe Amato, number 1, but look how close number 2 and Don Prudhomme in number 3 are.
The driver earns 200 points for every winning round, plus 50 bonus points for low elapsed time of the event, and 200 points if they can set a national record, which is very unlikely under these conditions. Now, Connie Coletta, Greg, is the only driver this year to repeat. He has won 2 events. Corey Mack won Phoenix back in March. Corey Mack trying to get back on that winning track and get back into the top of this points chase.
Connie Coletta qualifying 6th. He beat Pat Austin in round 1. Corey Mack qualified 3rd, 4.866, and beat Jim Head in round 1.
In the earlier stanza, Corey McLenathan smoked the tires from one end of the quarter mile to the other, and luckily got the win. He can't let that happen again here. Connie Coletta, a crafty devil. He's got a wonderful crew chief by the name of Tim Richards that, given that first pass, has probably figured out this racetrack. So too maybe has Lee Beard, crew chief of the car in the near lane.
They're staged. Coletta with a good start, and he will pull away to take this one. 4.921, and jubilation from his team. And in
the background, you can already hear the 5,000 horsepower motor starting up for the second race here in round number 2. This will be Don Prudhomme against Mike Dunn. There you see Mike Dunn in the Darrell Gwynn-owned car. That's the supercharger pulley just behind his head. The belt turning that blower creates probably an additional 2,500 horsepower on these engines.
Dunn has the lane choice with a 4.94 in the previous round. The burnout there by Prudhomme, who won his first race here in 1967.
And he won in 1991 and 92. You know, I don't even know how important the burnout is, as hot and sticky as this racetrack is. It's a ritual. Everybody afraid not to do it to heat up the tires in the racetrack. I wonder if you couldn't bypass it today.
Mike Dunn out of Mountjoy, Pennsylvania. Just inside the top 10 in the standings. Don Prudhomme, well, runner-up at the last race 2 weeks ago right here on Sports World.
Don Prudhomme has tremendous respect for Mike Dunn. He raced his father before him. He will not play any games in the starting line. Sometimes they'll get into a little staging battle or try to create confusion up there, blinking the lights. There is Jerry Gwynn, who is the crew chief team manager for Mike Dunn, Darrell Gwynn. I believe you'll see a straightforward staging process here. But bear in mind that Don Prudhomme has a little bit of a starting line fetish. He likes the stage last. Let's see if Mike Dunn will press him on that as Darrell Gwynn looks on. Mike Dunn moved right in. Didn't play any games with the snake at all. And it's Mike Dunn out.
But it is Prudhomme who takes it. Dunn on fire, pops a tire.
That blowtorch effect on the right-hand side of the engine has caused that tire to go down. Darrell Gwynn looks on saying, just what I needed at this point in the season. But Mike Dunn appears to be okay, and I doubt that the car is badly damaged. Maybe a little bit of chassis work and certainly a new right rear tire. NHRA safety safari right there. The fuse on Mike Dunn's engine just about 100 feet too short. Right there, the pressure's built up, the oil ignites, the tire goes flat. Again, he's okay.
Still to come, our top fuel points leader, Joe Amato. If he doesn't win this round, he'll lose his #1 spot.
This is NBC's Sports World, and today it's brought to you by Oldsmobile and your local Oldsmobile retailers. By Allied Signals Fram Filters. You can pay a little now or a lot later. By DuPont Automotive Finishes. DuPont, the official finish of NHRA Championship Drag Racing. And by Castrol GTX, engineered for today's smaller cars.
Did you know that NHRA top fuel dragsters and funny cars travel the length of more than 4 football fields in less than 5 seconds? Welcome back to Columbus for more of the Spring Nationals. Greg Lewis along with Steve Evans on the back end of this track. Will be providing us with not only analysis but interviews, and Frank Holly in the pits as we look at Blaine Johnson. Now Scott Coletta getting ready for their round 2 top fuel matchup.
Scott Coletta holds both ends of the NHRA national record at 308 miles an hour, 4.72 seconds. But don't expect those kind of numbers here today. The track just will not permit it. If you can bust into the 4s, you're doing real well. And Dick LaHaye, crew chief for Scott Coletta, knows that.
Qualifying #1, Coletta, but saying he'd rather qualify 16th than win. He's been having trouble getting into the winner's circle. Of course, that smile may remind you of Connie Coletta, his dad. Blaine Johnson taking his first ever win in top fuel in round 1 against the legend, Kenny Bernstein.
And there's his crew chief, brother Alan, saying, nail this guy, lead first, be alert. Blaine Johnson out of AAA ball, so to speak, a 4-time world champion in the top alcohol dragsters, but this is a whole other league.
So he's got to hit a home run here.
Coletta away first. And it is Scott Coletta by a full car length at 4.98 seconds to a losing 5.02. Scott Coletta collects 200 points for that victory. And here's a man who's counting points, Greg.
Joe Amato came into this with just a 26-point lead over Connie Coletta, and he must keep advancing to hold on to first place in the top fuel standing. The lane choice here going to Danielle DePorter, and she has taken the far lane. There has not been a victory yet on the near lane.
But Greg, that can be a bit deceiving because the quicker cars from the previous round have the lane choice. So the better cars are always going to be in one particular lane. We really don't know how good or how bad the lane Joe Amato has is.
Amato has not won a race yet this season. Consistency is the way he stays atop the standing.
Joe has made the Final Four semifinals more than anyone else, thanks to that young crew chief, Jimmy Brock. He's done a masterful job with his car. They still would like to win a race, though.
Joe Amato, the only man in NHRA history to win 5 year-end Top Fuel championships. And Danielle DePorter, what a task she has ahead of her.
Danielle DePorter, the youngest Top Fuel driver in the sport, just took over the reins of this car 2 races ago from Rochelle Splatt, a young Australian driver who decided for whatever reason to go back down under.
Their pre-stage now, and the lower level of yellow lights comes on. They'll be ready to race.
Amato on the inside. He allows DePorter to stay flat, but Joe leads first. Danielle loses traction. You're on board with Joe Amato. And Jimmy Brock had confidence in that near lane, an outstanding 4.90 second elapsed time. Big speed for Columbus, 293 miles an hour.
Standing still very tight among the top 4. All 4 have advanced to the semifinals. It'll be Connie Coletta versus Joe Amato, with Amato making the lane choice, and then Prudhomme against Scott Coletta, with Prudhomme taking the lane choice. Our attention now turns to funny car competition round 2. It'll be Al Hoffman versus Richard Hartman.
This is the same kind of horsepower you see in the Top Fuel dragsters, but it'll be much trickier to apply to this racetrack. They don't have that great big wing. The engine is in front of the driver instead of over the rear wheels. They have really got to pay attention to the atmosphere, to the racetrack, to their computers, their weather barometers to try to get these things down this slippery quarter mile.
John Force has been the dominant man in funny car competition. It's Hoffman, though, just 100 points behind. And earlier, our pit reporter Frank Hawley filed this report.
Al Hoffman's performance earlier today wasn't what they expected. It didn't look like the track conditions was a problem, but the car didn't run very well. Tom Anderson, all championships are won with some luck along the way, but I don't think luck's going to be able to carry you through the entire event. Are you going to be able to step this thing up so it can compete with John Force?
Well, I hope so. If it runs on 8 cylinders, it should run 520 something. And we'll see what that track's like out there. Maybe the track won't hold much more than that.
The biggest problem with all of the nitro cars is hitting on 8 cylinders. The fuel volume is so huge, even 2 magnetos can't always light the spark plug.
Al Hoffman, first place at the Spring Nationals in '92. And Hartman, he is not a contender in the season-long standing.
But he's in a very strong car owned by Johnny West. They don't run the entire national event tour. You never know what to expect. He's a young, aggressive kid. He can fight you at any given time. Hoffman over there, he's a street fighter. Ooh, and Hartman loses traction and almost control. Al Hoffman, 5.40 seconds. Helen Hoffman says that's a little short of what Tommy was supposed to run with this car. He wanted a 5:25, but they got the win light, and that's what's important.
When we come back, the points leader in funny cars, John Force. This year, he's only had to play catch-up with hamburgers.
Honor my race car.
Back at the Spring Nationals, John Force, the points leader, gets ready for his round 2 race against Tom Hoover. But first, it'll be Cruz Pedregon against Chuck Etchell. Pedregon in the McDonald's car. His first involvement as a racer, 1980, drag racing diesel trucks.
And he won the first diesel truck he ever entered, too. Chuck Etchell has got to get back on track if he's to have any kind of a shot at the championship. There you see the inside of his cockpit. Dodge Daytona body coming up for the crew chief to adjust the fuel system. Anyway, I was saying, Etchell's had a devastating fire back in March, and I'm not sure this team is completely recovered yet. They lost a lot of computer data and have really been struggling. Cruz Pedregon is having, well, just an okay year. He's won 1 race. Crew chief Mike Green, no feels they've got it dialed in for this track.
Pedregon was the champion in '92, his rookie season. And Etchell, the first man in a funny car to run a 4-second pass in October of '93.
But here today, he'd be very happy with anything in the 520s. Cruz Pedregon, you probably already guessed, had the lane choice. He's on the far side. Joe Amato, however, proved the near lane. Maybe there's nothing wrong with it at all. Inching forward, holding the brakes. They release the brake and stand on the throttles. Pedregon cannot overcome the lead of Chuck Etchell's Etchell's a 5:42 at only 264 miles an hour. Something happened on the top end of that car. It should have run faster.
John Force's car, this man, a 5:09 in round one. The next best, a 5:22. No wonder he's the force to be reckoned with.
Oh, he's performing in another dimension. He is not arguably the most popular man in drag racing today. Fans will wait for hours at his pit just to get a glimpse of the guy. Just praying for an autograph, and he's happy to oblige whenever he can. He's just a dynamic force in NHRA drag racing.
Does that kind of charisma give him a psychological advantage over Tom Hoover?
No. Tom Hoover has been drag racing since man invented asphalt, I think. Back to the days of front-engine top-fuel dragsters with his family. In fact, his father, George, 86 years of age, is the engine builder for that car.
Remember, if John Force loses here, he will lose the points lead to Al Hoffman. Out of Minneapolis, Tom Hoover, a journeyman at this game, but can he beat the man who is number one? The smile says it all. John Force says, I gotcha.
And John has an uncanny ability of sensing a loss of traction just slightly before it happens and massaging that throttle pedal to get the car down the racetrack. Hoover is crew hoping that he has the same skills. Hoover is one of those veterans that knows how to, as I said at the top of the show, even use the hand brake in the car as an acceleration tool on a tricky racetrack like this. Can John Force hang on to his points lead? We're going to know in about 5 seconds. Hoover would like to be the spoiler. Oh, and it's John Force on a rail. You can't do it any better than that. 5:18, 282 miles an hour. Hoover way off at a 5:51, only 220 miles an hour. John Force, perfection.
Force has told the field what it'll take here, and Leonard Hughes is now trying to find it in Gordy Bonnen's car. Casey Spurlock is the man that Bonnen will meet. Bonnen, the surprise winner here a year ago.
That's right, for another team. And Gordy Bonnen has the only contemporary Mustang body in all of funny car racing. It is fresh out of the wind tunnel at Lockheed Aircraft in Marietta, Georgia. And they have learned some things about how to trim that rear spoiler. Just little things that can all add up to better performance. Bonnen won 2 races ago in Memphis, Tennessee.
Spurlock on the left of your screen hasn't won since the Winter Nationals in February at Pomona.
Gordy Bonnen is an amazing competitor. He's one of those guys that just finds a way to win. No matter what the conditions or how good or bad the car is, Bonnen can bring you something.
Casey Spurlock, very colorful character in the pits. Diamond earring. Really have a diamond foot in this match.
Leonard Hughes making sure the competition is moving forward with Gordy. You don't want too much heat in these engines. The warmer they get on the starting line, the more power they make, and an excess of power can really hurt you on this racetrack today. You see them hurrying Gordy up. They move into what they call the pre-stage. Just a driver aid to let them know they're about 7 inches away from the starting line. Then they'll bump these cars forward, releasing the handbrake. So much for that far lane being superior. Spurlock loses traction, and Bonnen goes to the Final Four at a 5.36 second elapsed time, 283 miles an hour. When he went by our camera at half track, he was running 240.
So the pairings for the funny car semifinals, it's number 1 John Force against the defending champion here, Gordy Bonnen. Force has the lane choice, and Al Hoffman, number 2, chasing John Force for the season-long lead against Chuck Etchells, and Hoffman will choose the lane. When we come back, the semifinals in Top Fuel and our Pro Stock competition. Back in Columbus, the Spring Nationals continue. Connie Coletta's crew gets ready in the pit area. Coletta will face Joe Amato in the Top Fuel semifinal, a race for the Top Fuel point lead. But first, it's Pro Stock semifinal action, and it's Jim Yates versus Darrell Alderman.
Darrell Alderman debuting the long-awaited Dodge Avenger, and it has flown this weekend.
Pro Stock points after 2 rounds, just as tight as they are in Funny Car and Top Fuel. Alderman in 3rd, Yates in 5th, and Alderman could move up if he keeps advancing.
Jim Yates is a win just looking for a place to happen. He's been in 2 final rounds, lost them both. Wants to try again today. There's Dave Hutchins, the crew chief on that new Dodge Avenger. It'll be in the near lane. Darrell Alderman at the wheel, 2-time Pro Stock champion.
Alderman with a look of confidence here in Columbus, and Yates, 2 upsets in earlier rounds today. He is full of confidence as well.
Tony Yates, his wife, guiding him into that staging beam. Now, Pro Stock has been the exclusive playground of Oldsmobile and Dodge. Jim Yates trying to throw Pontiac into the mix here today at the Spring Nationals.
Yates on the outside lane, Alderman on the inside.
Neither driver wanting to move forward. Let's see who breaks. It's Yates. Yates reacts first. They call that a hole shot at drag racing, and he's got a big one. Here comes Alderman. No, he cannot catch him. The 3rd upset today. His crew loves it. Both drivers at 7.29 seconds, but the hole shot made it look worse than it really was.
Alderman's teammate will race next. Scott Jeffreyon will go against the old king, Bob Glidden. Jeffreyon, we're inside his car. 2 wins this season. His first career win came over Bob Glidden. But now let's go to Steve Evans, where he's been calling the action at the back end of the track with Jim Yates.
Well, Jim, you hole shot at Darrell Alderman, and not many have done that.
Well, you know that guy's a heck of a driver, and they got plenty of power over there. You just have to do your best every time you go up there. Our crew has just been working so hard to get us this far that when I get up the starting line right now, I got to do my best every time.
Scott Jeffreyon's car. The old Dodge Daytona he's driving. And Scott Jeffreyon, 2 victories and 3 seconds this year. Bob Glidden, he's won more than anyone in drag racing.
In any category. Now, you may be wondering, where the heck is Warren Johnson, the points leader? Well, this was earlier today. Johnson's Oldsmobile was in the far lane. Glidden's Ford Probe in the near lane. They took a long time to stage, and Johnson broke right on the starting line. A very rare mechanical failure, and that advanced Bob Glidden into the Final 4.
So when Johnson was backed up off the starting line, it meant he may be backing out of first place, because the driver of this car getting ready to go here, Scott Jeffreyon, can now take the lead.
You see Scott's right hand resting on those shift controls. It's a 5-speed transmission, an individual lever for each gear. Glidden likes the stage last. Jeffreyon lets him. Identical start. What a Pro Stock race it is. Jeffreyon taking the win and the points lead. 7.23 seconds for Scott, 7.29 for Bob Glidden as he departs the Spring Nationals.
So the pairings for the finals, Jim Yates will meet Scott Jeffreyon. Jeffreyon has the lane choice. Don Prudhomme waiting to fire on the pad. He will face Scott Coletta in the Top Fuel semifinal. But first, let's go to Steve Evans with Scott Jeffreyon.
With that win, you become the new Pro Stock points leader.
That's great, Steve, but, you know, we're here to win this race today for all our Mopar fans and all our loyal fans we have from Fairfield, Illinois here, Wayne County Racing, and there's one more round left today, and we'll worry.
That was a close one right there.
It sure was. Anytime you race a 10-time world champion and a guy like Bob Glidden, hey, he's a legend in this sport, and he's still running against us.
Well said. 7:23 puts him in the final.
Next up, another legend, a man who won his first race here in 1967, Don Prudhomme. This is his farewell tour. They won't see him again at National Trail Raceway. He'll go against Scott Coletta in their Top Fuel semifinal.
Well, some might stroke it in their final year, their farewell tour. Prudhomme has never raced harder.
Well, first, let's go to Frank Holly, who has discovered that not all the storylines are unfolding in just the pits. Frank?
When those Top Fuel dragsters take off from the starting line, 8,000 horsepower goes by on the racetrack just a few yards from where I am. It actually shakes the ground. It also presents a problem for a few of the cars out here in the parking lot.
We'll return to Frank to find out what those problems are as Dick LaHaye, crew chief for Scott Coletta, makes sure there's no problems with his car.
Don Prudhomme has the best performance of the day in eliminations at 4.86 seconds. Dick LaHaye knows that and has probably got a little more aggressive with Scott Coletta's car. There's Prudhomme. He's in the far lane. Scott Coletta will be in the near lane. Rudolph loves to stage last. He does. Oh, look at this. It is Coletta at 4.92. The Snake will get an early start on the traffic. Right now, let's go back out to the parking lot. Frank Hawley, what's all that racket?
The thunder from all those nitro motors sets off all of these car alarms. Does anybody know where the owner of this Corvette is? Give me a crowbar and I'll get in there and turn it off.
No, Frank, not my Corvette. As the Symphony of Sirens continues here, stay with us. More racing after this message from your local station. As we get set for more Top Fuel semifinal racing, the fans in the pits, 20,000 here today. That NHRA special privilege of access to the cars and the drivers. Tim Richards, crew chief for Connie Coletta, the man who wrenched Joe Amato to 5 Winston Top Fuel championships, and it will be Amato that Coletta faces here.
And that's Jimmy Brock checking out the starting line scene. Amato, a rather spiritual guy. Somewhere in that fire suit is a Ziploc bag with a 4-leaf clover, a rabbit's foot, and a half a dozen other assorted Lucky Charms. Joe Amato really believes in all that voodoo.
He doesn't need rabbit power here. He needs horsepower. 5,000 horsepower. All working well.
Free stage. Amato in. Coletta in. Joe Amato had a big advantage off the starting line and at the finish line. 5.03 seconds for the winner, 5.09 for the loser. Joe Amato stays alive on top of the points.
The pairing for the Top Fuel final, it's Amato versus Scott Coletta. Coletta has the lane choice. Now we turn our attention to the funny car semifinal, Al Hoffman versus Chuck Etchell. Both will need to find more performance in their cars if they hope to contend against Force should he advance. They've been running 540s in the second round. That will not be enough. Let's go to Steve Evans with Joe Amato, who's advanced to the finals of Top Fuel.
What do we run?
503.
But the car did I left on him or what? Yeah. Oh, I've been driving fair today. I just have to keep it to the final, you know. This young team, Jimmy Prock and all these guys are putting a lot of pressure on Joe Amato. They're rejuvenating me, making me get out there and drive my heart out. They said if I want to win the championship, it's in my control.
Well, you are responding.
Joe Amato showing his stuff. He is newly determined after the disappointments of last year to be a big contender this year. And he is #1. Hoffman on the right-hand side, Etchell's on the left.
Both drivers get traction. That's what they wanted. Oh, but the horsepower advantage to Al Hoffman at 5.30, 283 miles an hour. Etchell fades at 537, only 277.
Who will Hoffman meet? Will it be John Force, the leader in the funny car standings, who has dominated here? A 5.077 qualifying time. He has got this track dialed in. Or will it be Gordy Bonin, who won here a year ago and is having a great day? Now let's go to Steve with Al Hoffman at the far end of the track. Steve?
Well, it looked like one of those runs where everything went about according to plan.
I don't know what it ran. It seemed to run okay, though. That seemed to be the best one we made so far.
Is this track getting better, cooling off a bit?
Well, yeah, the track's going to be coming around, and coming down through here, it was running a little better than it normally does, and I didn't want to go to that last turnoff down there where you guys were, because I got no brakes on this thing, so I was just lucky to stop it.
Right, let's fix the brakes and hope John Force doesn't run better than a 530.
Al Hoffman will be watching anxiously, because if Force does not take this win, Al Hoffman will be #1 in the standings. Austin Coyle, crew chief for John Force. We all know the old high school physics equation, force equals mass times acceleration. Well, if the acceleration is big, force will be bigger and move on potentially to another win. It's Force in the far lane, and in the near lane, Gordy Bonin.
Force Force has thrown it away. He left too soon. The red light and disqualification. Gordy Bonnet smokes the tires, but he's a winner nonetheless. John realized the error of his ways, tried to stop the car, but he just couldn't do it. John Force, what an upset. Incredible.
The funny car finals. Al Hoffman, the new points leader, versus the defending champ here, Gordy Bonnet. Hoffman has the lane choice. And Gordy Bonnet seems to have dialed in this track. What about John Force? Let's go down to the disappointed funny car champ and Steve.
John, there's no gentle way to say this. You gave away not only that round race, but the points lead.
Yeah, my guys, they definitely did their job this week, and I dropped the ball.
Distracted up there?
No, I got a little antsy. Everything was really smooth. I was just concentrating, get after the light on Gordy. Didn't know what he'd do, and what can I say to the sponsors? I'm sorry, it's part of the ball game. We'll get it back.
John Force is out. When we return, it's the Pro Stock final. Jim Yates against Scott Jeffreyon. Did you know that an NHRA top fuel dragster leaves the starting line with a force nearly 5 times that of gravity, the same force of the space shuttle when it leaves the launching pad at Cape Canaveral? Well, who will be launched into the outer space of victory here in the Pro Stock Finals? Scott Jeffreyon versus Jim Yates.
Most of the fans came here, Greg, expecting to see an Oldsmobile Dodge final round. Not so. Jim Yates has interrupted that story with the Pontiac. Now, there is the Dodge Daytona. That is the older car. Only Darrell Alderman had the new Avenger, and he's out of here. Scott Jeffreyon's car, though, has a shorter wheelbase than the Pontiac. It's harder to drive on this tricky track. If he can get that done and leave on time, he's got a shot. But Jim Yates has been driving better than anyone in the category. His reaction times are quicker. Dave Hutchins of the Mopar team knows that, and I'm sure has got Scott pumped up inside that car.
The Pro Stock final.
Watch the hands. They tell a story on Tony Yates as she wants to get her husband staged in exactly the same tracks he burned out in. Otherwise, you defeat the purpose, really, of the burnout. Final round, Pro Stock, the 30th running of the Oldsmobile Springnationals.
Jeffreyon on the outside, Yates on the inside.
The ultimate hot rods, about 1,200 horsepower, 2,350 pounds with the driver. The final in Pro Stock. Great start, especially by Yates. Jeffreyon got out of the groove, but steers it back and into the winner's circle at 7:22 to a losing 7:28.
Inside Jeffreyon's car, let's take a ride through this quarter mile. Jeffreyon wins it. Let's go to Steve with the champ.
Good go.
Scott Jeffreyon, wins don't get a lot huger than this one.
No, it feels great. Everybody brought to my attention before that semifinal round deal. They're putting a lot of pressure on me, telling me if I was to win that round, I'd be in the points lead. But, we came here to win this weekend and worry about the points after everything was over with.
And there's the man you beat. He wants to shake your hand, Jim Yates.
Unbelievable. This guy is really doing a heck of a job out here, and if there's anybody that deserves to win, it's this guy. I know how it feels, believe me. I went through it sooner or later.
You got to slack up a little bit. Maybe we get there. That's pretty clever.
Congratulations to Scott Jeffreyon. He has taken the lead away from Warren Johnson. Alderman stays in third. And Warren Johnson's 2-year run as Winston Pro Stock champion could be in jeopardy. Funny car finals, it'll be Gordy Bonnet getting set here. Bonnet won last year, but remember he ran by himself, and his performance has been falling off today as he goes through the afternoon. It is going to be up to Leonard Hughes, his crew chief, to make sure this car is running at its best. His opponent, the new Winston points leader in the funny cars, is getting set, Al Hoffman. Also remember, coming up, top fuel final, Scott Coletta and Joe Amato, and Frank Holly is in the pits with Scott Coletta's crew. Frank?
We've been talking to a lot of crew chiefs today to see who can master the slippery conditions here at the racetrack in Columbus. One guy that's been able to do it has been Dick LaHaye. Dick, What are you going to do for the final? Are you going to back off a little bit against Joe Amato? You can't afford to do that. Give me your thoughts.
Well, basically, we've been backing up all weekend. I mean, it's really hard to... This is a pretty high horsepower race car, and you either got to slip the clutch a lot or you got to take power out of it, and I don't like to take the power out of it, so we're probably going to slip the clutch some more and hope we can slide it down through there.
Do you think you're going to have to run another 492 to beat him?
I'm hoping it'll run 85 at around 300, to be truthful with you. If it cools off enough, the number will be there.
Dick LaHaye sounds like he's going for the throat in the Top Fuel final. You know, all Al Hoffman has to do to beat this man, Gordy Bonnet, I feel anyway, is to just repeat his performance from the previous round of 5:30. But to repeat is very difficult at this point. 1 5-second run on these engines is like putting 100,000 miles on a passenger car. It is worn out. They are completely rebuilt between rounds. If you don't do everything exactly the same, and you've got 9 sets of hands in there, it isn't going to repeat.
Gordy Bonnet on the near lane, Al Hoffman the far lane. Funny car final, and no John Force in it.
And I don't think the lanes are even a factor here now. They're both bad. No more legendary car owner than the one Gordy Bonnet works for. That is Paul Candice out of New Orleans, Louisiana. He and T. Wayne Robertson put this team together very late last year, and it's just now starting to gel. Helen Hoffman, a native of Australia, gives the car a friendly pat and sends Al on his way. Inside is Bonnet, outside is Hoffman. Bonnet stages. Clutch dust you see in the cockpit of Al Hoffman's car. It's normal, but it is Gordy Bonnet winning his second straight Spring Nationals as Al Hoffman loses traction, overpowers that greasy lane. Bonnet 523, 282, his best performance of the day. He saved it for the final shot.
Well, Al Hoffman has not won this race, but he has taken over the points lead. Hoffman #1, Force drops down to 2nd, and Bonnet with the win here moves up from 9th to 7th. Now let's go down to Steve Evans and our champion.
On this day, we give the man the credit, not the motor. You drove the wheels off this thing just like you did a year ago.
Wow, Columbus 2 years in a row. This is wonderful, Steve. This is great. This one's for Mr. Candice and T. Wayne. They put together this team, the Smokin' Joe's team. And you know how hard these guys have worked all year? This race was for them. This was real special. We're in the middle of that points chase now. We're not giving up a Winston points chase. We will chase them right to the bitter end.
Congratulations to the funny car champ here, Gordy Bonnet. Who will it be when we return for Top Fuel finals? Scott Coletta being strapped into the car?
This has been NBC's Sports World, and today it was brought to you by Budweiser, Beechwood Age for a crisp, clean, classic taste. By Craftsman, a line of 1,600 hand tools made in America, guaranteed forever, only at Sears. By Goodyear, #1 in tires. And by Oldsmobile and your local Oldsmobile retailers.
Welcome back to Columbus and National Trail Raceway, carved out of a cornfield in the early 60s, and this weekend hosting the Spring Nationals for the 23rd year. Columbus fans warming up for the Top Fuel final. It'll be Scott Coletta versus Joe Amato.
Interestingly enough, no matter who wins or loses, they will leave here 1 and 2 in points, Amato, Coletta respectively. And neither driver this season has won a race. That's about to change for one of them. And as far as I'm concerned here, Greg, I think this is a toss-up. I don't see an edge in talent, in driving skill, anywhere.
Coletta qualified #1, but again, we said at the top of the show, he's been complaining, say, I'd rather qualify 16th than win. He cannot win them.
But we heard his crew chief, Dick LaHaye, tell Frank Hawley that they were not going to back off. They were going to go up here and attack it with everything they had, showing maybe a little discretion as far as the way the clutch is set up. There is no transmission in these cars. They've got so much power, they don't really need it.
but the clutch really serves as almost gear changing as it goes through, in some cases, a dozen different phases down the racetrack, applying more and more power.
Afternoon's been cooling off, Steve. What about the condition of the track, the kind of speeds we'll see here?
Well, virtually every drag strip tends to get better later in the afternoon. Its enemy is the sun. And the lower the sun gets, not so much the temperature, but just the heat of the sun can boil rubber and oil out of the pavement and make it very tough for a guy like Dick LaHaye to confront. This is the best it will be all day right now.
300 miles per hour?
It's possible. This is a rather short racetrack. A lot of drivers really don't like to extend it any further than they have to.
Scott Coletta, looking for his first win of the year, will be on the outside lane. And Joe Amato, the points leader in the top fuel competition, will be on the inside lane. And there have been more victories on the lane that Coletta is in today.
That's true, but the better cars have selected that lane, making it look a little more lopsided than it really is. Joe Amato, he's been in so many final rounds, he has to have a little more composure than Scott Coletta. With a better reaction time. Oh, and Scott explodes that supercharger. He has got his hands full, Greg.
What a job by Scott Coletta to control this car. And Coletta, with the whole shot, will win this championship. His first of the year. His elapsed time, 4.952. It was longer than Amato's, but it's a 0.06 of a second difference at the finish line when you count the reaction time. Coletta's out and all right. He's asking, how did I do? And yes, he finds out that he has won his first top fuel race of the season. And look at his car. The supercharger is gone. Let's go to Steve Evans and Scott Coletta.
Greg, Scott Coletta came out of the car screaming, did I win? Did I win? Talk about in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, I'm all right, Kathy and Corey. I guess we'll take it whatever way we can. I think we might have passed him in the points. We can fix that car. I'm just worried about winning the race, and we did.
You blew the blower off it, you blew the tires off it, and you still got there first.
I don't care. I kept it out of the guardrail. Everybody did a heck of a job.
Where did it go boom?
I think right at the first light. And that's why I remember looking over as I heard it blow up, and I saw him over there, but I didn't think he was ahead of me. I couldn't tell.
He's okay.
Well, that victory has ignited jubilation with Scott Coletta's crew. In the points, though, it's Joe Amato, who is number one. Coletta, second place now, and his dad has dropped to third.
In all the excitement, I couldn't get out of the car. I was hooked.
Scott Coletta, literally on fire with that win today.
Awesome. Around in the final.
Coming up next, it's the AVP on NBC. The world's top volleyball players head for the shores of Lake Michigan and the Miller Lite Open at Milwaukee. And as we leave you, let's pay tribute to those who won here at the Spring Nationals. For Frank Hawley and Steve Evans, I'm Greg Lewis. So long from Columbus, Ohio.